Pro-abortion activists have been lying to us for decades, maybe even centuries, about their real position. I think the most insidious lie was we want abortions to be safe, legal, and rare. Well, joining us now is Alexandra DeSanctis, a great advocate and columnist, and her book, Tearing Us Apart, How Abortion Harms Everything and Solves Nothing, is available on paperback later this month. Alexandra, thanks for writing this, first of all, because the subject matter goes well beyond just this idea of the procedure. If we boil abortion just down to a medical procedure, we're sort of missing the bigger picture about what really is the impact of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the problem here is Americans have been told for 50 years that abortion should be legal, like you said, safe, legal, and rare, and that this is somehow women's health care, when in fact we know that every abortion takes a human life. And so our book takes a look at what are the ramifications of that for a whole society, that this has been legal for 50 years now. So
when you say abortion harms everything and solves nothing, you sort of peel that back a little bit. Obviously, you wrote an entire book about it, but in summary, the medical dangers, the psychological dangers, are we still sort of delving into this topic because it's sort of been forbidden to examine?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think pro-lifers are great at making the case that abortion kills an unborn child. We have to make that case. That's the fundamental harm of abortion. But our book goes beyond that and says, here are the ways that abortion, far from helping women, has actually hurt women, has hurt families, has torn apart marriages. It's actually created a very anti-woman society, or helped to create one. It's harmed our medical profession by peddling the lie that abortion is some kind of women's healthcare procedure. It's harmed our culture. It's harmed our politics and our legal system. And so each chapter kind of goes through all these different ways that every aspect of our society has been really destroyed by having legal abortion.
So much of the focus from the pro-life movement has been that Roe v. Wade thing. You guys got to get rid of Roe v. Wade. And it's now become almost a cliche to say that getting rid of Roe v. Wade is literally the beginning of this fight, of this discussion, of this debate. Right now, where do things stand on a state-by-state basis? Because, we really do have two Americas if you look at what California and New York is doing versus what Florida and maybe Alabama is doing.
Unfortunately, that is definitely the case. We have more than a dozen at this point pro-life states where abortion is mostly illegal. Unborn children are mostly protected throughout pregnancy. And then on the other hand, like you mentioned, we have very blue states where abortion is not only permitted, but they're trying to become, abortion tourism states and encourage women to travel there to get abortions throughout pregnancy for any reason. And then in the middle, we have about, maybe 20 or so states where people are still kind of hashing it out. Voters aren't sure what they think. Legislatures are still working out the laws. The fight right now, I think, is over where are those states going to come down? And that's part of what our book is trying to educate pro-lifers on. How do we advocate the most pro-life laws we can possibly get?
And of course, it's the law right now, Alexandria, that every conversation has to be shot through the prism of the 2024 presidential election. Thankfully, we know where Joe Biden stands on this. He's radical on it. But within the Republican Party, there's actually an interesting conversation going on with Donald Trump sort of finding himself more to the left of the heartbeat bills that Ron DeSantis signed into law in Florida.
Yeah, I think unfortunately there's this narrative among some Republicans that abortion costs the Republican Party in the midterms. I think a more sophisticated look at the results suggests that's not true. I mean, if you look at governors who won huge races, Florida, Oklahoma, Ohio, Georgia, and a few others, they were vocal pro-life advocates, including Ron DeSantis, signed very protective pro-life laws, were very, willing to defend that stance, and they won by huge margins, even as other Republicans in their states lost. So I think, in fact, being pro-life, being vocally pro-life, defending your pro-life stance is a winning issue for Republicans, but you have to be willing to defend yourself. The other side's going to lie about you. You can't just be silent and kind of roll over.
You have to be willing, and you also have to be able. One good thing about this is that it was really easy for Republicans to say, I'm against Roe v. Wade and we should overturn Roe v. Wade. Now you actually have to articulate a thoughtful position and apply it to how you're going to govern or what kind of legislation you might support. That's not as easy unless it's really part of your DNA.
That's exactly right. I think this is something many politicians are uncomfortable talking about. They're not prepared to talk about. They've had, like you mentioned, this crutch of, well, I'm against Roe v. Wade. And now many of them, unfortunately, are saying, we'll just send it back to the states and I don't have to talk about it. But I don't think that's true, right? A nation divided against itself cannot stand. We have to forge some kind of new consensus around this issue. And it's not good enough for Republicans to just say, oh, my state legislators will handle it, talk to them. You have to have a pro-life stance, and you have to be willing to give a compassionate, articulate defense of that position.
Yeah, I agree, and I would suggest that these politicians read your book, Tearing Us Apart, how abortion harms everything and solves nothing. That'll help them sort of figure out how they can better articulate their positions. But let's face it, they don't read anything. Their staff reads it and then gives them a summary. So, all right, all you staffers, read Alexandra DeSanctis' book. Alexandra, thank you. Great conversation.
Thanks so much. Great to be with you.
That is it for tonight, but we'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, I will see you on the radio.